preaching some of this stuff, and I'm about to take it on myself after y'all have had all morning to sort of digest what's been going on out in Minnesota. But before we get to any of that, it's not that ice that we're worried about. It's actual ice that we're worried about today. And this is developing. So let me run through what I think the forecasters are saying for this weekend for us. Now, this is much more serious than a few snow flurries or a little bit of a dusting or a couple of inches of snow. We are on track to receive an ice storm on Saturday. And when we say ice storm, that's always hail or freezing rain. And the worst of those culprits, of course, is freezing rain. It wraps around power lines. It wraps around old tree limbs. Things start falling down, and then we lose power. And then it's deeply cold. It's cold not only just for Saturday, but next week just looks like it's just going to be brutal with the low temperatures at any rate. So here's where we stand. There are three basic computer models that the forecasters use to produce a forecast. When you see people put maps on the internet or whatever of one computer model, that's not conclusive, and it's not a forecast. It's just a guess, a computer guessing at what it projects. And then forecasters use their knowledge, and it's like almost like averaging a set of scores in a class that you've taken. They sort of average the models and try to get some truth out of it. And that was the problem we had last week when you had some forecasters thinking that we might get snow in North Alabama and others saying it was going to be South Alabama. It turned out it did hit in South Alabama. And so but the models were inconsistent. Here's the sort of the kicker on this story. The models are consistent that we may get some amount of ice. Now, as you all know, it's Monday, and this is an event about 5 or 6 days out. And so the forecasters are not going to be confident in any of this till sometime around Wednesday. And in that case, that's when we hit the alarm bells. So when I say alarm bells, it's not these kind of storms. If you've ever lived through a serious ice event, they're just brutal. You're not driving anywhere. There is no driving on this stuff. I don't care if you're from Michigan. I love when people from Michigan tell us that we don't know how to drive. I'm just saying you can't drive on frictionless snow. And then, of course, the possibility of a huge, widespread power event here in our state. So what we don't know is where. We know it's coming, and Tennessee and North Alabama look to be much more in the crosshairs of accumulation. But every single one of those maps had Jefferson and at least Shelby and counties north of that in our listening area and in our metro area. It had those two counties in all three maps. Let's see how they change. I think there's a new one out in a couple of hours, a couple of new model runs, and see what the forecasters are saying. The reason I give you a heads up so far out, of course, if you're paying attention online, you may have seen these maps, is because this is one of those things that does induce, the milk and bread panics. But what I think you should be preparing for, and even if it doesn't come about for us this weekend here in Birmingham. By the way, if you're listening from Coleman north up into the Huntsville area, we got listeners all over the country, really, but primarily here in Alabama. It's almost a certainty at this point, but things do change in the forecast. But I think you should prepare for the power being out. And that's a whole different set of plans than you normally would prepare for, because this has a real potential to knock down your power service. So have a way to light your home, have a way to heat your home, or an alternative source of heat. And later in the week, if this starts to become more of a reality, we will look into some of those tips about generator use and things that people forget from season to season. Just to be helpful, just to give reminders on all that stuff. And the thing is, some of those things get in short supply very quickly. If the forecasters start to really put out warnings on this by Wednesday or Thursday, there'll be a run on these things, fuel, generators, this kind of stuff, if you already don't have an alternative source of heat. But here it comes, and check on your family, and y'all huddle together and figure out how to do it. Because if it's widespread, I mean, it could be days and days of no power because of the size of the event. One, it's difficult for the trucks to get out to get the power restored, and then you'll have ice, and you'll have sand on the bridges, and the roads get nasty, and then they refreeze, and it's that kind of winter, it seems. Just to think, last year we had left-wingers that believe in climate change telling us that we were going to soon have snowless winters. The rest of the country, it's just going to be straight brutal. I mean, just brutal, especially in the Midwest. I've seen some wind chills today of 40 below of how it would feel outside. That's why I'm glad I don't live there. So anyway, just a little heads up on that. Of course, we always update you, and I believe in early preparation and not late minute panic. You don't have to panic if you stay prepared. So I'd have a way to heat your home. I'd have a way to prepare your meals, have a way to keep vulnerable pets and people in your life warm, and pretend you're Abe Lincoln and do without power for a few days, because it could come to pass. Just don't know yet. There's not a high confidence in it, but I'm telling you, I'm not a meteorologist, but I'm skilled for decades at reading meteorologists. I got a lot of friends of mine that do that for a living, and I can sense when they're legitimately concerned. And when all three of those models came in the same, it was like, okay, this could be legit. Let's wait and see how it plays out for a couple of days, and then we can start getting in motion for that kind of an event. But I think that's going to take precedent over all of this stagecraft that we're looking at in the news today out of Minnesota. And that is the dominant story today, is that situation where the weirdo paid protesters decided to storm a house of worship. Now, I don't want to go back over things you already know, and you can imagine the outrage I feel like you feel and any other churchgoer feels at this event. So as with any large story, I like to break it into compartments, sort of areas to talk about. One area is the politics of this, the optics of it. How does it play? You're already seeing immediate pushback. Even Tim Walz had to come out today and condemn it. Now, he's responsible for it in large part because he's the one just last week that was telling these folks to put their bodies out in the streets. And then you had that Jacob Fry guy telling them to record these ICE activities. Now, what appears to have happened is it's the same group of players that have been showing up at a lot of scenes. What's really bugging me about the stagecraft of this is the intent of it is to create a flashpoint during election year. Y'all ever notice that these kind of things only happen in critical election years? 2020. We don't burn cities down in the non-years. George Floyd that whole situation was manufactured. Now, he died, but the circumstances of which the country was wildly lied to about the circumstances of his death. And that's all they needed. They didn't need any facts. They didn't need any moral high ground. They just needed a flashpoint for destruction. And they wound up in that city alone, well, the two cities, Minneapolis and St. Paul, doing $500 million of the damage. And the bigger damage that they did was staying in the news night after night, creating these images, creating the sense of unease among voters. So I think the ultimate goal is division. It's to get sort of milquetoast people that don't know what they believe in the world, that are easily swayed, that are emotionally driven, and get them charged up over this stuff. But here's the problem. The Trump administration didn't cause any of this. The Biden administration caused this. The Biden administration let these people in. The operations that are going on right now to remove them are according to our laws. And a lot of people understand that. It's not a majority yet. It's still, about 40% support ICE and 35% don't. There are a bunch of people in the middle that don't know what to think. There's a huge group of people in this country that are just so tuned out and so afraid of developing an opinion, they don't weigh in heavily on these things. But that's the group that's being targeted with these operations. And so it's so manufactured, from the pre-printed signs to the tactics, the training, the organization of it. But I think a hammer is about to drop on these people, and Trump wisely is trying not to inflame it. He's got his eyes on the election year. So I'm talking politics right now. Later we'll talk about the law. I'm going to talk about journalism because of Don Lemon, and I'm going to take him on in a hard way with some sound that's pretty condemning of this guy. He is a straight idiot, and he's been that way most of his life. My first encounter with him was back in 1996, and I'll tell you about that in a little bit. But this guy did something very foolish, and I think he's very much subject to be indicted and arrested over it, maybe within the next few hours, and he should be. It's plain that he should be. But forget him. He's just a diva looking for attention, and he's going to get some attention the next few days. But in terms of the politics of it, when he's starting to crawfish in his statements, So is the governor. The mayor's yet to really address it because he knows some culpability there. Some of the consultant class that are advising the Democrats on the midterms are cornering people in phone calls and conference calls all over this country right now. I know this for a fact because I know some people that are involved in these quickly arranged meetings, and they're telling their folks to dial this down and to move away from the optics of it. When you sense that it's starting to affect the left in a way that hurts their political prospects this year, because we're headlong in it. We're headlong in the midterms. Alabama's got qualification going on all this week. We'll know who our candidates are. A lot of states are doing the same thing. I think you'll see, when you see some of the liberal networks move away from the story, then you know the optics are hurting their election chances. The other person that's aware of that is Donald Trump and his team. They're counting heads. They're counting votes. Operationally, they've got people in the field, especially when qualifying is completed and they start to strategically try to build these campaigns to keep the majorities in Congress. That's everything to the rest of the Trump term. If you let the Democrats control either of these chambers in his last 2 years, his presidency's over, and he knows that. Now, there's some critical stuff associated with that. I'm going to stick with the politics of it in terms of electioneering and all that through this segment. And I've got so much to say about what the emotional side and the legal and the ethical side of what happened this weekend, the journalistic side. I can get to those things here in the next few minutes. But in terms of this election year, I think Trump is being wise, and he hasn't invoked the Insurrection Act yet. And even though Pam Bondi's talking tough, nobody believes her tough girl routine. I'm not sure when or if any of these people are going to be actually arrested. In other words, there was all this hubbub this weekend about Jacob Fry and the governor being subpoenaed for participating in this nonsense. Now, should they be? I think so. If you're not worried about the political spin, yeah, the justice requires that when there's an insurrection in this country, and that's what this is, it's organized, they're trained, they're funded, the attempt is political, they're trying to overthrow the government. They're trying to use violence in the streets in a way that they described about the January 6th crowd, but it was absurdly laughable that that was an insurrection. That unorganized 3-hour event was not an insurrection. This is an attempt to control this country and create national chaos using this flashpoint. And by the way, the flashpoint came because they engineered it. They trained that Yahoo woman to do what she did, and she did it. And that was a product of them. They wanted somebody to get shot. And now they're capitalizing on that, thinking she's the new George Floyd, and she just isn't. There was a large part of this country, I think, naturally sympathetic to George Floyd, but there's just not that kind of sympathy here because these people are flat crazy. Now, back to the optics of it, they when they marched in a church, it crossed some line, I think, with average Americans, and you can sense it in the reactions from the other side. You can sense it in some of the, even a lot of the online inflammatory stuff is just that. It's inflammatory. You can really sense that something has gone terribly wrong, and this country feels an unease about this. Just to give general thoughts about it, it's one of the most un-American things I've ever seen. The right to worship is sacrosanct. And it always has been. And it's that way for every person of faith that gathers, no matter what your faith, no matter what your race, what part of the country you live in. You just don't interrupt rudely and take over and trespass and intimidate people in those places. Some things should be sacred. These people don't, religion, let's just go back into history. Religion has always been a threat to collectivists. They worship the state. This is philosophical, but it's absolutely true. You can apply this test to many periods in history and see it for yourself. They're always in a rivalry with any kind of church formations. The Soviets, one of the first things they did, the Bolsheviks, were raid the churches and try to tear down and burn the churches. You're seeing this kind of stuff all over the world to this day from leftist groups and in some ways Islamic groups that raid an area and go into an area. They want to replace one religion with another. The left in this country wants to replace the Christian church. with its own ideology. And to do that, they want to confront it. They have no respect for it. They mock it. They pretend to cherry pick biblical quotes and appeal to those things. In a little bit, you'll hear an example of that. They have no respect for people that want to. Even if you're in one of these liberal churches with a, that and embrace some of these weird doctrines, it's still a church, and the left does not embrace that. So the churches have always been a target. You can look just to the last few months in this country. Y'all, Charlie Kirk, he wasn't embraced by everybody in the evangelical movement, but a lot of younger people did listen to his Christian message, and they shot him in front of everybody. They fomented some young, disturbed weirdo into shooting him. And so the product of that, the school shooting at the school in Nashville, that was directly targeted based on the manifesto against Christians. Christians are being targeted by the American left, and this is another example of that. They want to provoke emotion. They want this country to burn. And so they created these optics knowing there would be pushback, hoping that it would be a flashpoint that could convey their little mission in Minneapolis into a broader disarray in this country. Trump's got to carefully manage this, and one, get it under control, but two, not overreact, because it's a small group of people. Most of Minneapolis and St. Paul, by the way, the church was in St. Paul, which, do y'all not find it ironic that the city is actually named after a Christian saint? And yet the Christianity itself is under attack in these same areas. So, man, my mind's still racing. Let's do the break, and we'll come back, and I want to walk through some of the reaction, the sound. The whole Don Lemon episode is 2 or 3 segments in and of itself, just because what this guy represents in our country. He's the worst of this country. He's one of the dumbest humans I've ever had a conversation with, and he just displayed that this weekend, trapped himself in his own lies, and I hope he's got handcuffs on by the end of this week. I really do, but I won't hold my breath. Ox Foundation Solutions bringing you the show tonight. Oxstrong.com, OX. This is my professional company that can absolutely handle anything. The way I put it is underneath your main floor, underneath your floorboards on your lowest floor, crawl spaces, poured wall foundations, concrete block basements, all these things, slabs. They can handle it. They can level your house. They can come in and remove the water from it and keep that out of there, dry you out. Boy, that's a problem. The helical pier system is amazing. They can remove mold. That's not as big of a present thing this time of the year with the cold weather, but one of the things you need to get that done, and encapsulation can stop that from happening. And encapsulation, one of their other services, is also a big thermal barrier. When we hit this cold weather next week, if your crawl space is encapsulated, you've got a less chance of your pipes cracking and breaking underneath there, and that frigid, fierce air is not coming into your home and fighting with your furnace to keep you cool or warm or whatever you choose. Ox can handle that for you. They're a premier encapsulation company. Y'all reach out to them and let them help you too. It's oxstrong.com, OX, oxstrong.com. Back after this. All right, y'all, let's do this thing. Leland Live, Talk 99.5, back at it. All American Metals bringing you the show this hour. I do appreciate them and all they've done for me. Now, they didn't build my building. I pieced it together myself. Almost pulled my hair completely out. That was a nightmare project. And if I had just known about these guys that they could do my design work, integrate everything, produce my parts, and get it out here and guide me through the rest of it as far as finding a contractor that knew how to do these projects, I think I would have saved myself 3 months, several $1,000s, and a lot of frustration. If you've got any kind of steel building project in mind for this year, whether commercial or residential, these are your folks. It's not even questionable. They are less expensive than the corporate entities that do this stuff. They are quicker on their turnaround on your design work and your actual building because they're in control of the process. They produce all of these components themselves and will help you really pull this together. And plus, they're just great to get to know. When I say I thank them, when they first came on the show, I said, you know what? I've got some building damage to mine that happened with a unfortunate series of events a couple of years ago, and they came out and knocked this. This thing was just too high and too difficult. I didn't have the tools and equipment to get up there and fix these damaged panels, but they knocked that out in a few hours and matched the components perfectly. You cannot tell this building ever had any issues. And I loved watching them work. It was cool to see them do that with expertise. The same thing for you. They know what they're doing, and they're great folks, good patriots. Over in the Bessemer, Hueytown area, it's All American Metals. Check them out online to look at some of their projects. It's aa-metal.com, aa-metal.com. Well, the segment's kind of short, so I don't want to get too deep. We'll go into some of this other Minnesota stuff in a minute. I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about our thing at Chubb Father's last night. Chubb and his restaurant started serving breakfast today. And so he was nice enough to ask us to come out and eat breakfast at night last night. I think they just wanted to do a test run of the menu and serving people and getting that out. AJ, it was delicious.
Man, it was so good. It really was. It was good. And, honestly, it was good to see you and the wife.
Yeah, you too.
Yeah.
I hadn't talked to Glenise in so long, and she just was dynamic. She had so much going on. It was good to catch up with her.
Yeah. Steve West showed up. There was a couple people.
That's right.
Popped through. So, yeah.
Saw my man Tom Fisher, and JD was there from y'all's show, and Redland and all those guys, and it was good to see everybody.
Yeah, it was good. And it's kind of one of the things about, like, it's almost kind of like with breaking bread. We like food brings people together, so we kind of like it.
Love it. All right, just want to throw that in there. Thank you for inviting us, Will. Y'all stay tuned for their show. Tonight after 6, man, I'm about to preach again. We may have to pass the plate before I'm done. I got stuff to talk about after the break. So hang in there and do it. Leland Live, Talk 99.5, y'all. Back in a minute. Leland Live, Talk 99.5, Axiom Tax Resolution Group. Oh, Lord, here comes another tax season. I'm not kidding. You'll be getting your documents probably from your employer or from whatever you do for a living in the mail pretty soon, and we've all got to do it. Some people will put it off to the last minute, and I used to do that too, but I really want to get that squared away this year. And if you're facing issues from the past or even this year, you know you've got a tax burden that's going to be overwhelming. You're not going to be able to pay it, even though a lot of us are going to get tax relief in this coming year, and we've got to get through that year in this filing season to see what that is. But the big, beautiful bill, a portion of that is going to be good for people on their taxes this filing season. But if you've got trouble with the IRS, and that means that you either owe a lot of money or they're harassing you for something that's unfair, you really need professional representation. I'm not trying to cost you money. I'm trying to save you money and heartache, because they will freeze your life. The federal government has enormous power to freeze everything they consider an asset until you pay them up. But there are laws that protect you from that kind of harassment and intimidation. And they also won't tell you all your rights. If they reach out to you, they're not going to tell you about programs to help you settle for less. You need to know these things, or deadlines they've missed, where they're trying to collect on something that's too old for them to collect on it. They're not going to tell you that. You're not going to be able to figure that out. Perry knows. Perry knows all this stuff. Perry Cronin, Axiom Tax Resolution Group. As we get into a new tax year, he's the man, and he'll help you work your way out of it and get settled. In some cases, like the Fresh Start Initiative, could be for as much as 80% off what you owe. It's Axiom Tax Resolution Group, 205tax.com, 205tax.com. Y'all reach out to him. The phone number here in Birmingham is 872-1100. My favorite part about Perry is he's right here. You meet with him face to face, and he's not somebody on a phone from some TV ad you saw in Peoria that may or may not know what they're talking about. This is Perry. This man's an expert. In fact, I don't think there's anybody in the country that understands this better than my man Perry. Y'all reach out to him, Perry Cronin, Axiom Tax Resolution Group, 205-872-1100, 205-872-1100, Axiom Tax Resolution Group. I was about to make a crass joke about Don Lemon, but I'll hold off. This guy is one of the more outrageous people on the public scene. He was run out of CNN years ago, and he's still trying to cling to his former celebrity. He worked here for a time in Birmingham right after I had left television news. I didn't work with him alongside him in that business, but he came through Birmingham. He stopped here for about a year. I can't remember where he went after that, and he wound up at CNN. I remember one day he called me. I'd wound up working at the Republican Party, and we got into a huge fight. I think it's probably the biggest argument I've ever had with a reporter in my life, because remember, I had just recently done that job, so I understood their jobs, had good relationships, but I chewed this guy out. I mean, AJ, I'll take the blame. I may be the reason Don Lemon hates all Republicans. It started years ago, and I'll take credit for it. It was 30 years ago, but I chewed his ass so hard I was pretty sure I was going to get fired. What an idiot when I slammed. That was in the old days when you had those phones. You could actually slam before everybody had a cell phone. You could go, and I remember the day I slammed my phone down, and this dude walked in my office, and I told him the whole thing. He said, "Let's go whoop his ass." I was like, no, I can't do that. I got to be professional. He's an idiot. He's always been an idiot, and he proved how stupid he is this weekend by participating in the raid on that church. He was a participant. He is not a journalist. There's nothing about this guy that qualifies him as a journalist. And he's trying to hide behind several things. First, he started with the First Amendment. He was lecturing the pastor that the First Amendment allows these people to be in that sanctuary during that meeting. Now, most of you understand enough about your Constitution because you're not as dumb as Don Lemon. You understand that the First Amendment does not entitle you to barge into a church service, trespass, and interrupt. Another provision of the First Amendment, by the way, has anybody ever read this to Don Lemon? It's the freedom of religion, the right to assemble, which is what those people were doing. He was spitting that in the face of this pastor, who, by the way, I don't know much about this pastor, but he did a remarkable job of being assertive and being direct and keeping things calm. Now, they weren't violent, but they were threatening people. You all saw the video. I'm not even going to play the audio. It's enraging. Scaring kids, and Lemon was part of it. Now, how do we know this? Because, so first he used he used the First Amendment as the reason he was there. And then when he realized that he was probably criminally in trouble, that the Trump Justice Department has literally flew prosecutors to the scene today to begin investigating and maybe arresting people that participated in this. They, on the law, forget the optics for a minute, on the law, they most likely violated the FACE Act. And there's another provision in the law that I think it's a denial of rights is what it's called. I know it's in Code Section 18, but it's when you deprive somebody of their basic civil rights. And worshiping, write this down, Christians, because some of y'all have forgotten. And you pastors listening, you're about to be challenged on this radio show. If you're not up for it, turn your radio off. Just turn it off, and you can just keep it off. But Christians have a right to assemble and gather. They tried to get us past that notion during COVID when they shut churches down, and the church acquiesced. The church has been laying down to these kind of threats for a long time, and you're about to not to be able to worship in this country if these people win. If these Bolsheviks, and go read the Bolshevik Revolution, it's not a new playbook. History has seen this before, where they see religion as a threat and they'll attack churches, burn churches. I believe we had a record church burnings in our country last year. And in this case, go in and disrupt the service in this way. And they have no right to do it under the law. A number of things, trespassing, civil rights violations. And because of that, Lemon's in serious trouble because he was participating. So then it looks like he's maybe sitting in an airport somewhere, and he starts saying, look, I didn't know what they were going to do. I was doing my job and chronicling. I'm going to play the sound for you so you can hear it yourself. I was chronicling the events. I had no knowledge. I'm not a part of this group. And then the internet does what it does. Thank God for them, because real people sitting around in their PJs have better journalistic credentials than this dipwad. And they immediately found, prior to the church being invaded, where Don Lemon did a little stand-up routine on whatever podcast he does and announced that he was outside a, quote, operation, and these people were about to hit a secret location and surprise some folks, but he couldn't tell his audience where it was, but he knew where it was, and he was going to go along for the ride and broadcast it live. He's a participant. He was a propagandist for this group. He admitted it before they did it, and then when he got in trouble, he acted like he didn't know anything about it. And now he's been caught with all that. In fact, there's a video, and I'm going to play all this for you in a second, where he brought them coffee and donuts before the raid. Same people that went into the church. He was out there helping them out. He moves in for a kiss with the organizer, who is a BLM idiot. Supposedly she went to law school, but has dedicated her life to activism. So this is activism for activism's sake. He interviews her and gives her a little sugar. Yeah, he was part of it. He knew everything that was going down. They invited him there. In fact, they thanked him for helping them after they were done. All this was already out there in the world before he lied about his knowledge of it. So he's in serious trouble with the feds. And so what do you do when you're losing an argument? What do leftists do when they're losing an argument? When you can't argue with somebody, you go to your identity. And so, yep, sure enough, before the sun even set on this frigid day, he goes on some left-winger podcast, this homely girl that used to be an actress or something that's got a podcast. He goes on her podcast and says it's because he's a black man, and blame the people in the church for being white. You can't write this. This is like SNL, and it's going to piss you off when you hear these sound bites, but I'm going to play them for you anyway. So let's start with the one that kind of got us all going. Let me see if I can get all this stuff to pull up properly. And we'll start with as the day got going, you had Lemon. I got to refresh a couple of screens to get these sound bites back up. As the day kept going, you had Don Lemon over here. And this is, I think, well, what happened to my screen? AJ, technology, man. I got a lot going on. I saved these windows. I think I can pull it back up in the right order. I saved these windows. So Lemon, here's the two sound bites you need to hear first. I'm trying to do this in the right order, so all of that I just said makes some kind of sense. Well, now I can't get crap to pull up. Is X down? After that big setup, I got no sound. All right, I do have this sound. Here's Don Lemon giving him some coffee and loving on him before the big
Lemon is on the front lines right now. Thank you.
Follow Don Lemon. He ain't on CNN no more, so he right here in the front line.
Independent, yes.
Tell him to come get some coffee.
Yes.
Hey, Don Lemon
Oh, my
got some
God.
coffee for
It's
y'all.
Don Lemon.
And donuts.
And donuts.
And donuts.
He ain't talking about police.
You want some coffee?
He want some coffee. Don Lemon. I said, I trust Don Lemon coffee.
You want some coffee?
He ain't finna poison you. Let's get that
I
coffee.
want some coffee. Thank you, Don.
Okay,
Great to
good
see
job.
you here. Thank you. Perfect.
Donuts and coffee from Don Lemon. This is now. Remember, he didn't know anything about it. Oh, I'm just a journalist. He hid behind being a journalist. He lied about the First Amendment, and that's because he's black and gay. Now let's hear him lie to this camera, and then the bite goes back in time where he announced about knowing everything that was about to go down on his whatever Dorby podcast that he has. Let's take a listen to this.
I want some coffee. Thank you, Don. Great to see you here. Thank you. Perfect.
I had no affiliation to that organization.
Let me back that up and do it again. AJ, I'm multitasking over here.
The MAGA administration and the fake news MAGAs are losing their mind over something that's not even true. I had no affiliation to that organization. I didn't even know they were going to this church until we followed them there. We were there chronicling protests. Once the protest started in the church, we did an act of journalism. They're getting the operation together again. This is
okay. Now this is switched to, just to be clear, this is switched to before he said that to the world, trying to get himself out of it because he's about to be put in jail, which he might enjoy Thursdays. I'm just saying. But here he is out with his giant parka on, telling us what was about to go down.
an operation that is secret, that they invited folks out. Can't tell you what is going to happen, but you're going to watch it live unfold here on the Don Lemon Show. There are for this reason it may look like MAGA coded, but there's a reason they have so many white people here. I'm just going to be honest. It's because of the operation that they're doing today. It's important to have allies, as they said, white allies here. So that is what I can say. I turned our camera off of them because they're giving some critical information here. But there we go. Everybody's ready to go. Let's go. Okay.
Okay, let me just break down what he's already said in that little clip. He knew their tactics. He didn't just know where they were going and what they were going to do. He knew that when he used the phrase MAGA coded, he meant they dressed up like white folks. They used white faces. They had an American flag with them so they could get in the church. These folks think they're camoing themselves. So he knew their tactics of disguise to blend in so they could get into the church and cause this disruption. He knew this before this happened. Here's the rest of that clip.
Thank you guys for allowing me to be here.
Okay,
Thank you guys.
Okay.
How are you?
Good.
To see you. We're on. We're not saying what it is, what's going on, but thank you. Tell us why you're doing this.
So
This is Nakima, Levy Armstrong.
This
She's
is
on
the
show.
BLM
Levy
lunatic.
Armstrong, civil rights attorney, longtime activist here in the community. And, we protest and do activism in all kinds of ways. This is Operation Pull Up, more of a clandestine operation. We show up somewhere that is a key location. They don't expect us to come there. And then we disrupt business as usual. So that's what we're...
So he's standing there in the planning phase, but he says, I'm a journalist. I had no idea. It was coincidence. I just happened to be hanging outside a white church. Me, a black gay guy, Okay, and then Harmeet Dillon, so she goes on this morning saying that the feds are taking this seriously, and he is absolutely in their crosshairs. Here's something from early this morning
Lemon used the word we,
on Newsmax.
Not protesters, not they, not them, or in their preferred pronouns. He said we. Does that put him on the line as a protester and lose his First Amendment media coverage?
This position of his is so stupid. I was trying to figure out how to put it in layman's terms. Imagine you have a bank robbery that's being planned by a number of criminals. They're crossing state lines. They're using the wires. And then a podcaster says, well, let me embed myself in here and come along for the ride and live stream the crime. That would not be protected by the First Amendment. And so it is a crime to disrupt and harass and make people in a church or any house of worship feel unsafe in this country. And when you're part of that planning and show up and ride along and laugh outside about and make commentary outside about how disrupting and putting people in fear is literally part of protest and part of the plan. You know, we are not reaching conclusions now. Of course, everybody is entitled to the presumption of innocence. But if I were giving advice to a journalist about this, which I have done in the past, I would say do not participate in a crime actively.
Yeah.
He's in trouble. That's not only did he break the law. Let's just talk about ethics. If he was a journalist, and he has been in the past, there was never a time in my years in actual journalism. I'm a commentator now. We do some news, but I'm not pretending to be a journalist. I'm not pretending to be fair. I'm extremely biased. It's my job. My job is to have an opinion. His job can be to have an opinion, but he's not a journalist, and neither am I. And in journalism, you never participate in the story. You're trained that way. It's sacrosanct. It's part, in the old days at least, it was part of the industry, the whole industry. I'll give you an example. I've told this story over the years, and I was a young, very ideological young journalist, fresh on the job. I remember going to an event down in South Georgia, and there was a older, his name was Elliot Miner. He was a legendary AP journalist. I guess he might have been, to me, he felt like he was 80, but he was probably my age now. But he was a veteran. Everybody in the state knew him, and I'd run across him several times. He mentored me through a death penalty case where I watched an execution, so I got to know him during that. He was there too. So I go to this event. It was some farmer's event down in South Georgia, and they're serving lunch in the back. And he's over there where the media was standing, and he walked up and said, "Get you a chicken sandwich." And I said, "No, sir, I'm not here to participate. I'm here to just cover the event." Because I was sanctimonious and full of my 23-year-old self. He goes, "Boy, if you can sell your journalistic soul for a chicken sandwich, you don't need to be in this business." And I went and got a chicken sandwich. The point was, we took that seriously. And there's always, I guess, gray area, but you don't do it. I covered crime. I covered actual criminal cases. Just Friday, we played a clip of a bank hostage situation that I had to participate in. You didn't cross that yellow tape. You don't trespass. You don't participate. You cover. And that's not what he was doing. He was an absolute participant in this event. So even ethically, and let me preach for just a minute on this, anybody that calls themselves a journalist nowadays should be calling this out. This is not your industry. The lines have been blurred. I understand that in the modern world. But if you have any integrity left in your industry, you should be trashing Don Lemon for trying to hide behind that to get himself out of trouble here, because he's not a journalist in any way. So there's the legal aspect, there's the ethical aspect, and then there's a lot of stuff I got to say about the church itself and where the church is. And then I want you to hear Don Lemon pull out the race and the gay card to try to also defend himself and to be as sanctimonious as he's ever been in a soundbite that just came out this afternoon. And then I'll be done talking about this fool, Don Lemon. Southern Skies Dermatology. I'm so excited. They've got a new location that they're about to open close to me. And I don't go all the time, but I'll usually make a yearly visit. And sometimes there's stuff that pop up. I've had melanoma in my family. I've got a family history with my mom, and I've had a couple of incidents where they thought they saw something of concern, and I'm of an age, and I know we used to sunburn like crazy back in the day. So I stay checked. I want to live a long time. I don't want something like that that's completely preventable taking me out in the end because I was too stubborn to go get checked. So you don't be that way either. Go get checked and do it at the professional locations of Southern Skies Dermatology. This is all they do. A lot of dermatologists can check you for these things, and Dr. Mari would encourage you to go there if you have a dermatologist. But if it's skin cancer and you want to be serious with people that do this all day long and all the time, it's Southern Skies. Southern Skies Dermatology. Great locations all around, and a new one coming this year. As soon as they're ready to let you know, I'll tell you about that place. Go see them and take care of yourself in 2026. Southern Skies Dermatology, southernskiesdermatology.com. All right, let me move quickly this segment. We'll get on up to the top. Allen and Company bring you the show this hour. Here comes Valentine's Day. It's just weeks away, and it's time to do something special for somebody special. If you need a personal jeweler, they're my personal jeweler, and I know they just do a great job. It's a family business, 2 generations in there, the Thompson family. So what you get is Allen's expertise. He's the actual master jeweler there that can design and resize and fix and repair and clean and upgrade anything you bring in. Design from scratch, any repurpose. Sometimes you take an heirloom piece and kind of redesign it or repurpose the stones. He can do any of that for you. So it's a great resource to have. And everything stays in their location, in their vault. They don't have to ship it off for work. And that's wonderful too. It's Allen and the Thompson family in Vestavia on Highway 31. Put them in your GPS. You can't miss them. Allen and Company. Y'all go see them for Valentine's Day. Great gift ideas all over the store. And they got that little gift box operation to gift wrapped it right there in the back. Buy those earrings or whatever, get them gift wrapped. You're good. You're gold. You're done. Allen and Company. All right, a couple other thoughts. Let me play this clip. So, again, the first way to know in America in this time of the year that somebody has out of facts, they're out of real arguments, they're on the defensive. They use race to keep you on the defensive, but it means they're on the defensive. Here's Don.
I think people who are, in the religious groups like that, it's not the type of Christianity that I practice, but I think that they're entitled, and that entitlement comes from a supremacy, a white supremacy. And they think that this country was built for them, that it is a Christian country, when actually we left England because we wanted religious freedom. It's religious freedom, but only if you're a Christian and only if you're a white male, pretty much. And so, yeah, I absolutely 100%, but it's an intimidation tactic. And, I said, I don't understand how I've become the face of it when I was a journalist. I do understand that I'm the biggest name there.
Oh,
and I'm also, as I was on with my producers this morning, you and Kylie talk all the time. My producers were saying, I said, how did I become the face of this? And my producer said, Don, you're a gay black man in America. And this is...
It's because he's gay. It's not because they went into a church and he participated in it. And yeah, he's the most well-known name there because the rest of them are just a bunch of no-name losers outside of the activists that they know all over Minnesota. This won't be the last time they did it. Some people are watching this today and I've heard some other people analyze it and go, man, they underestimated the outrage they were going to cause. There'll be pushback. No, that's what they were trying to cause. They want Christians to be uneasy. He even said it repeatedly to the people there saying, well, they're just going to be a little uncomfortable. There's another soundbite where there's a kid crying because his church just got raided. I mean, he should be safe in the house of God, but his church got raided by these Bolshevik maniacs. And Lemon's out there going, well, we're just going to make some people uncomfortable. Here's who I want to be made uncomfortable. The illegal immigrants that came here without our permission. I want the people that stole all that money in Minneapolis to be uncomfortable. And I want them to be back in Somalia, very uncomfortable with that hellhole, third world butthole of a country. And this guy can pound sand. White people. He's losing, and I hope he gets arrested before the end of the week. That's all I got to say about that idiot. Back in a minute.